believe so. Try to be.
This is the beginning.
Ready? All right, so we are on the line that begins with the word Gilu Yilkus Lamato Davke. Just a few lines above the middle of the page, page base. The kavana in the entire creation is the Adam, because Adam can fulfill this intent, the tshuka, that there should be a dira b'tachteinu, which he accomplishes through Torah mitzvahs. What is dira? Tachteinu we are still going to discuss. Dira, first of all, is something which, as he explained, something which is beyond, supersedes practical aspects, definitive aspects, some things that are practically needed. Dira is something which touches the very essence of the person. We discussed this last time. This is an important principle to understand. The Gemara says, this is so true, the Gemara says, and Chassidus brings it down, not here, but that Odom she'ein le bayis, einoi Odom. A person who does not have a home is not a person. It's not any Odom, it's not a human being. We discussed this, I think, a little bit last time. This whole union of owning a home is exclusively something which only the human being appreciates, can understand, can relate to. Lahavdul, it doesn't exist anyplace else. No other creature has even the beginnings of it. They also have to eat. They also have to be protected against the weather. Right? They crawl under the rocks to protect themselves against rain, whatever it is. The birds fly down south when it becomes cold. They also have to be skinned to protect themselves. But a dira, that's something completely outside of their realm totally. Because this is an essence. And only a human being really has an essence. So this statement, only human being has an essence, we'll still discuss, but we already essentially discussed this from various angles when we pointed out that the entire creation, with all that, with all the myriads of different species and development and all that, is nothing if not for the human being. And human being, you have the whole world, it's nothing. Put one human being in the world, and you have a real world. It's a phenomenal thing. It means that he brings a totally different quality to it. That's called an essence, which eventually will slowly identify. Okay. Now this is the union of dira. And this dira has to be betachtoinim. What is the union from tachtoinim? So he says like this. Should be able, I should read it. Bishvil el masol yeni. The kavana, the intent of the creation, was not for the sake of Olam HaSolyenim, of the higher worlds. Asher Shom Meir Gilei Elokusa Yisbarach, where Hashem's Elokusa is Meir Begil. That was not the Kavanah. Even though there is Gilui Elokus there already. The Gilui Elokus that's in Eilus Elyenim is not the Kavanah because it does not really represent any great accomplishment, any great revelation. It's a higher world, and therefore it is Gilui Elokus. There's Gilui Elokus over there. Kiim Davko, only Davko exclusively and specifically Oil Mezatachteni, the lower worlds. That is where the Kavanah is. What is different in Oil Mezatachteni? Here is where we will deviate from time to time and try to explain this. So we have to follow carefully. Anything that we don't understand, you'll of course ask me. Davke Oil Mezatachteni. What is Oil Mezatachteni? She's havusam hu alidei tzimtzum. His havusam, their coming into being, comes alidei tzimtzum, through a tzimtzum, vehelem ha'oir, and the concealment of the light.
But aren't they like the higher worlds also? Like,
I'm sorry?
Aren't the higher worlds also like weren't they only created through Tzimtzum, like through silk or something?
Yes, worlds in general is after the Tzimtzum.
So what are you saying that the higher worlds, like, fine, so are you saying that like only the lower worlds means that like there's a Tzimtzum? Higher worlds also, there's also a Tzimtzum.
This is why he says al tzimtzum. He doesn't stop at that. Al tzimtzum behelem ha'oir, and then goes on to describe it. Yes, all worlds are through tzimtzum. Huh? But there's a difference. For instance, in the human being himself. As I said, this is what we'll try to kind of focus in and understand. In the human being himself, there is a neshama. The neshama, the neshama is not really mislabish. In mislabish, I understand the word mislabish in the guf. The guf is not a keli, is not capable to house the neshama. Should the neshama be mislabish in the guf would dissipate. There will be no more guf. What comes into the guf? It comes what's called a ha'ora of the neshama. Generally speaking, this is what we call oyer, but oyer itself has many madreges. And then there is what's called the ha'ora of the oyer. So in the human being itself, we know that there are many madreges. For starters, just superficially, we all realize that the life force in the human being, the very sense of being alive, is something much closer to the neshama than even his seichel. and certainly his physical activities. Physical activities, this is mamash a subset. You know what's a subset? It's like they hardly see any life in it. Like when the body, when the goof moves, when you make a step, you don't see a koyach hanefesh. It seems to you that the foot moves. There are muscles, there are nerves, and the foot moves. As a matter of fact, as I mentioned many times, this is so concealing of the neshama that the scientists who study the world from a natural perspective, they say there is no neshama. Show me what the neshama is. The goof can move by nerves and by all kinds of different ways. I don't see where the neshama comes in. They're absolutely wrong. There's no question about it. They're blind. But nevertheless, if there is a basis for what they say, only because if you look down, so to speak, on the physical activities of the human being, which that's what you see, you don't see a neshama. Which in actual truth, we know that this is totally false. Because if a person takes a step, regardless of the nervous system, regardless of the muscles, number one, the goof has to be sensitive to the directive of the will, of the seichel that tells him to move. That's a measurement, that's life. But besides that, what makes a person move? His seichel. What makes the seichel tell him to move? It's his life. It's a neshama element that directs him to move. So we see neshama in every aspect of the human being. So therefore, that whole approach is totally false. But nevertheless, for our purposes, we understand that this is called TOUGHT. This is called very low. In other words, to the extent where the oil hanefesh is mamash concealed. What do you see? You see only the effect of it, the functional effect of it. Not the neshama itself, but its effect on the goof, its action. One of the difficulties, one of the reasons that the world is so blind to godliness and blind to even to the soul of man is not that they don't see the soul functioning. They see that the human being has got such fine thoughts, such fine capabilities, talents, sensitivities, and they have a very big difficulty to say, where is it coming from? All kinds of different explanations. But why do you look for explanation? Why not recognize that there's a neshama? The difficulty why they try to find alternative explanations is that they cannot perceive what a neshama is.
Well, you can't physically see it.
I'm sorry?
Well, you can't physically see it, so that's why they probably can't.
I can hear.
They can't see it.
They can't see neshama. They see
Right.
the function of the neshama,
Right.
but don't see neshama. There's no way they can see it. They can't even see it in their mind's eye. They can't even perceive it.
They have like a soul.
Of course they have a soul,
I don't know.
but they don't relate to it.
They can't relate to their soul.
Well, that's a separate thing. They don't relate to it. They say, they go down, they want to have something concrete, they want to have everything explainable like Pesachel, and that's it. However that develops, but this is one of the difficulties that they have. And this is the meaning that it's behelim. Even though everything comes from the neshama, but that oil neshama, that this is neshama element, is concealed. What do you see? You see the functionality, the effect of it.
Wait, so what you're saying is that the higher worlds, they see that comes from a higher source. And the lower world, they don't see it.
That's right. And in the human being, we have, so to speak, a moshel, an illustration of these various different levels. The human being is like a microcosm of the entire Seder Ishtalshalos. It's not that easy to identify, but to a certain extent, we all can identify. We have Chokhmah and we have Bina. And we speak from time to time, the difference between Chokhmah and Bina is that Chokhmah is much closer to the Nefesh. Chokhmah senses the thing the way that the Inyan is inside the truth. And it's not able to explain why is it like that. That is the job of the Bina. That's why you have to really focus in and labor hard to understand what the Chokhmah is telling you. But the Chokhmah is so sensitive to the truth of the Neshama itself. So the Chokhmah is not that far, as much concealed. The Oir HaNefesh is not that much concealed in the Chokhmah as it is in the Bina. That's why Chokhmah, in a very real sense, there is madrigas in Chokhmah itself also. There's a madrig in the Chokhmah that's called the Muna, which is actually above the world. Because in other words, because it's not tested by the world. It's not something I see in the world. I have proof of it. No, I just know it directly. It's like knowing Elokus directly without having the process of how did I find out. So this is a level in the human being itself that not so concealed from the Neshama.
How is this higher than Chachma?
Emunah? I'll explain to you, but I don't want to go too far into it because the Chokhmah is also like a recognition of the truth, but in Chokhmah the truth makes sense. In Amunah it doesn't have to make sense. It's just the truth. You understand? In Bina it's even beyond that. In Bina everything has to come in place and explained and so forth. Okay? So this is just to get us an understanding, a sense that there is what's meant to Avusam al de Tzimtzum ve'Helem ha'Oir. That's why you call it Eremes Tachtenim, because they actually represent a level, a presence where the oir was mitzumtzum, and then behelem. What does this mean? So the Rebbe explains further, more specifically. It means like this: Sheho'oir horishon, that the first oir, and I'll explain in a moment, misalem mistate legamri. The first oir, misalem, vanishes, essentially, and it's concealed completely. Misalem means misalem in itself, it's completely retracts, vanishes, and becomes completely concealed. V'nimshach oir, and then is nimshach, is drawn, an oir, she'ene be'erech oir horishin klal. That is not in proximity, not comparable at all, not in the level of oir horishin, the first oir, klal at all. What is the meaning of oir horishin? There's a meaning in these words, because otherwise the Rebbe would say the higher oir. It doesn't say the higher oir, it says oir horishin. So I want to kind of get into this and try to explain it, because to understand these things, that's what this is about, even though it's a little challenging. And we'll go into it as far as we can, as long as we don't lose each other, okay? The moshel that we have, miraculously, the Rebbe provided for us in our world a moshel to understand this whole phenomenon. But in order to understand the moshel, we need 10 moshelim to understand the moshel. But we'll try and get into this. What is the moshel for oil in our world? Huh? The sun. Superficially, it appears to us a very simple phenomenon. Right? The sun shines and it hits light. But then when we try to kind of examine our own observation, examine what is this phenomenon, what is the experience of having a sun, you see that it's not so simple at all. To start with, many things which we're going to say, I mentioned from time to time. To start with, the light of the sun comes from the sun. So it seems to us it comes from the sun because the sun is a ball of fire. Right? Strike a match, have fire, it also gives off light. So what's the difference? Sun is a ball of fire, the match is a fire. So it makes perfect sense. There's no mystery in this whole thing.
No, but the fire by the match was concealed. That's not so real.
Well, once again?
By the match, the fire is concealed.
When you strike a match, after you strike it, it's not concealed. It's fire. So it's just, this is fire and this is fire. This is of light, these two of light.
Okay.
Huh?
By the match, the fire is consuming something. It's using it up. By the sun, what is it consuming?
There you have it, right? You're looking at the sun. Think about it. You're looking at the sun, and it gives off light because it's very hot. It's a very hot body, extremely hot, because it burns. It consumes fuel. Consumes fuel. If the sun is based on the consumption of fuel, at least the way we observe it, then the fuel should run out. Such a huge fire, how long can it last? How much fuel does it have? Accumulated right there. It should run out. We're talking about thousands of years. You're not talking about, a long period of time. Thousands of years. But then, furthermore, if we examine it more closely, let's say we say, yes, the sun has so much fuel and it can burn for 5,000 years, and give off energy, all this. Okay. In our experience, a fire is a very huge fire that can burn for a long time. Okay. How does that present itself? Let's say it starts off this big. Okay. After a while it becomes this big. After a while it becomes this big. Let's say it's a long while, but it has to become smaller. Right? If you have a certain amount of fuel, it's all accumulated there, so a certain amount of fuel takes up a certain amount of room. As the fuel gets consumed, it has to become smaller. It doesn't become smaller. The sun is exactly the same size as it was when it was created. And then, similarly, on the other, from a perspective of the power of the fire, if it's bigger, it has to be a bigger fire. There's more fuel, more fire. It's not. It's exactly the same. There's no consumption, no change. So what type of entity is this sun? We don't know. We're not going to try to understand what it is. But one thing, we're going to follow the path of what we can identify, we can understand. You follow me? What we can understand. So how that works out with the fuel and all that, it's a separate issue. We're going to put it on the side for a moment. Yeah?
No, I'm persistent.
What we have to conclude is this. It's clearly in front of our eyes that the light of the sun is not fuel dependent. You understand what I'm saying? Fuel dependent? Because the fuel doesn't dissipate. Huh?
Because the sun doesn't get smaller.
Doesn't get smaller. It's not fuel dependent. Which means what? There's an element of light in the sun per se. This light is, and the sun has light. What's called in Chassidus the etzem behiri. It's not light that's being created by consumption of fuel, like a match. You understand what I'm saying? The Rebbe should put light into the sun. It's not light that's being created. It's not light that depends on the consumption of fuel. If we follow through this line of thought, that the sun has light, so to speak, in an essential level, then that would mean that the presence of light in the sun is the counterpart to the presence of darkness on the earth. Darkness on the earth does not come from any place. It is primarily dark. Naturally dark. Right? It doesn't have to, you don't have to conceal anything in your light for it to be dark. That's the way the earth is. The sun is the opposite of the earth. Light in the sun is as natural and fundamental as darkness on the earth. It's etzem behiri, it's light in essence. Can you imagine that? We can't even begin to understand what that is, but that's the way it appears to us. That light to the sun is the same as darkness, just as darkness to us on the earth is a natural and fundamental presence, which comes from nowhere, and that is the state. In the sun, light is the state, is the primary state. Just as the earth does not have an element of light at all, you don't have to eliminate, there's no light at all. In the sun, there is no darkness at all. Just like on the earth, you can't imagine light. You have to bring light into it, it doesn't have light of its own. In the sun, there is no such thing as darkness. You can't even imagine darkness in the sun. Right? But this is the way. This is the Rebbe's creation. This is what it is. How the Rebbe created that, leave up to the master. But that's the way it is.
So by being starts when it starts getting like says.
Hmm?
When it starts becoming like says time, right?
Like
so,
what?
Says. No, says.
Says, no?
Oh, when it gets dark, right? So the sun's going down. See, there is some darkness over there.
In the sun?
Hey, not the sun, no, but fine.
Not in the sun. The
Fine,
sun.
so darkness is like in the world, you're saying?
You know what? The darkness is by us because our light is not a natural light. It's something that's brought to us from the sun. So as soon as the sun goes down, there's no light. It goes back to its natural state of darkness. But in the sun, light in the sun to the sun is the same as darkness to us. So fundamental, like the same as darkness.
So what we're saying is that there's no switch for the sun. It's like, oh, it's shining.
Okay.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's not a question of whether there is. Yes, it's always shining. The point is that it's not shining by activity, by anything happening, by producing fire, by consuming of fuel, like we would imagine it to be. It's just a presence of light. It's a reality of light. So we should put light into it. Hamoir, finished. As a matter of fact, it says, okay, we have that. I want to, on the lighter side before I go deeper, okay? And it's brought down. The Ramban says in the Chumash, Ramban says, you know, the first day, it says, "Vayehi ba'im Elokim hi oir, vayehi oir." But there was no sun. So how was there light without a sun? The answer is, and the Gemara says, oir shenivra b'yem rishon. This was a different kind of oir. It was not an oil dependent on a moir coming from someplace. It was oil present in the world everywhere. And with this oil, Odom Orishain, Odom Mabid Boy Mesev Oil Matsayf. With this light, he was able to see and look from one end of the world to the other.
So what happens to the light nowadays?
I'm sorry?
What happens to the light nowadays?
Okay, 1 second. But that oil, he was able to see from the Mesev Oil Matsayf. Now, the light that we have, you can't. Because the light, like any light, the light comes from a certain direction. The minute it hits an object, so the object blocks the light, and you can't see any further. The light that Nivra B'Yem Rishon did not come from the one direction. It was light, primary state of light everywhere in the world. So it couldn't be blocked. It wasn't blocked. You could see everything. You could see this side of the table and this side of the table at the same time. Right? We can't even imagine it, but that's one thing. It's a light without a moyer, without a source. Light the way it is in the sun. But then there was also darkness. That's why it had to be separated. They can't be together. Because together, the one, it's two opposites. Okay, that just. So this light, Gonzi, this light was hidden, was concealed.
Right.
After the 7 days of the creation, the first 6 days.
That's once you had the Chet that's
Right, after Shabbos it was concealed. But Raman says that light was actually implanted into the sun in a limited way. In a limited way. It's not light in the same way that it's light everywhere automatically. It's light coming to us. But the light, the way it is in the sun itself, as we said before, it's an absolute light.
Wait a sec. So the sun that was created on the 4th day.
Huh?
What was the sun that was created on the 4th day?
On the 4th day, so the Rebbe should put into the sun this basic Amoyer light, a light on a different level.
So why if there is light in the world, so why did there need to be a sun?
In the first 6 days, it didn't need a sun.
Which is that?
The function of the sun first actually began to operate after the first days of creation.
Oh, so it was just like a candle in a lit room. It's like a candle lit in a lit room. It didn't do anything.
It didn't do anything. The first 6 days, no. The Rebbe created the sun to be a moyer, and its function began to actually take place after Shabbos.
Same thing applies to the moon?
What?
The moon and the stars also? Like,
The moon is the same thing, because there was no darkness, what you need the moon for. But that's my side. The reason I brought it down is to explain, and this is something which we can not so much understand and relate to, but this is something which this is the way we perceive the sun, that the sun has light without consumption of fuel. Not the natural light as we know it. Have a candle. A candle has a wick, and the wick burns down. That maybe makes sense to us. But the sunlight, it doesn't make sense. From our perspective, it doesn't make sense. It's a light, the Rebbe made a luminary. The sun is a miracle. And I said, light to the sun, from our perspective, it's a perfect miracle. Light to the sun is like darkness to us. So this is what's the essence of light. Now, the essence of light and darkness cannot cooperate. Now, should that type of light, like the sun is, the etzem of light, come down into our world, what will happen? It will become a different kind of world. Right now, how is our world work? We have light from the sun. We have light from the sun. But even while the sun is shining, and it brings light to the world, it doesn't change the world. The world still remains fundamentally dark, except there is light that illuminates it. In other words, when we see things in the world, it doesn't make the world fundamentally light, like the sun. It makes us able to see, despite the fact that the world is in itself dark. You follow this? What? When the sun shines, the world doesn't change. You could see in the world, but not that the world becomes bright. You could see even though it's dark. The world itself remains what it is. But the sun makes it possible for us to see in the dark. Right? You understand that, right? Yes? Deb, you all understand this? This is an important and very important concept. You understand? It's a very important concept. This is what's called a ha'ora. A ha'ora means you have something reflective of light, but not light itself. It reflects light. That's called ha'ora.
So what shines here is not light?
Excuse me?
So what shines here is not light?
It's not the essence of light, as the sun knows it.
But it is sun, though.
No, it's a subset. It's a ha'ora of sun.
The ray of the sun.
It's a subset. It's a ray that is able to illuminate darkness.
Okay, but it has the same things as the sun, no?
No, it doesn't. The sun is a different kind of light completely. It's a light that knows no darkness.
Can we be like that here?
It's a light that knows no darkness.
But this light does? The one that's...
This light, yes. Yes, this light combines with darkness. It makes it possible to see. As a matter of fact, I explained it many times. How do we see things? Physically, how do we see the subject?
Light bounces off and goes.
That bounces off the object and comes to our eyes.
Because of Hora.
Huh?
Because of Hora.
It's the ha'ora. It reflects. That's how we see. And another thing. We see objects precisely because the fundamental state of darkness is not affected. What does that mean? It means that the way we see object is we see light and shade, light and shade. If we didn't see shade, we didn't see objects. We see the contrast, always. If there is no shade, then we can't see anything.
It's darkness.
What?
We see darkness.
We see darkness, or we see just light, but we don't see objects. So the light that comes to us from the sun this is what's called the ha'ora. It's not the light as the sun has it. Nowhere near. This is ha'ora, and that ha'ora is so minimized that it can hit a physical object and be deflected from it, and that's how we see it. Doesn't change anything in the world. Doesn't change the world from dark to light. It makes you able to see in the dark. That's essentially the way it works.
So we don't see it.
Huh?
We don't see it that way, no? We don't see it that way when we choose the sun. We don't see it in the darkness.
No, we see it in darkness. I said there is shade all the time. You know the difference between this and this? What's this? What's the difference? Why is this dark and this light? Because it's a different shading. It's not light. It's the amount of light that gets deflected, that's what you see. The rest is dark.
But when the sun shines into the world, we don't see darkness at all.
Of course you do. You don't see shade?
We just see the ha'ara.
What?
See the ha'ara of the sun.
No, I'm talking about in the world. In the world, you see shade, right?
Okay, we don't see the full thing of fire.
So me?
That's what I think, right?
When the sun shines and it's hot, where do you go to? Under a tree. What's under a tree? Shade, dark. The sunshine, the sunlight is blocked. If there was no darkness, you wouldn't be able to see anything. No? You understand what I'm saying? So light does not eliminate the darkness at all. It what's called illuminates it. It makes it possible to see within the darkness. That's what it is.
It's like a blind person, we call him
Sorry?
blind person, like he has too much light. He just
That's what the Gemara says. That's what we call saginor, because he's not able to control the light.
He doesn't have a filter.
What? There's never filter.
We would be like that if it would not be like our.
That's right. The same is true on a much higher level. Please understand, okay? Same is true, the neshama in the guf. The neshama makes the guf live. It gives life to the guf. It's mislabish in the guf, and the guf comes to life. The guf, however, remains a physical guf. Doesn't become neshama. Neshama is life itself. Neshama doesn't die. Neshama doesn't have to be fed. Neshama is life itself, like the sun, the essence of life. That essence of life cannot come down into the guf. What comes into the guf? The ha'ora of the neshama. Because the guf itself, even though it's alive only because the neshama makes it live, not because the guf itself becomes alive, living. It's constantly being enlivened by the neshama. But the guf remains a physical thing. Where do we see that? Are you with me? Where do we see this? We see it in the following situation, that if if the goof gets blemished, let's say you get a cut on your finger. You get a cut on your finger. So the goof is actually damaged. And it has to heal back. So here we have two phenomena. On the one hand, the goof will heal back. Why will it heal back? Because it has a neshama. The neshama will cause the goof to heal back, to grow back perfectly the way it should grow back. While on the other hand, the very fact that you could cut it, you can damage it, shows that it's not neshama. Neshama you can't cut, you can't damage a neshama. The fact that you can damage it shows that the goof remains a goof. But it has a neshama in it that will allow it to heal back. You understand? Now, this is what the MAAMAR is saying. Ha'oir ha'rishen was concealed completely. What is the oir ha'rishen? Just like in our moshel of the sun. What is the oir ha'rishen of the sun? The oir ha'rishen of the sun is that type of light that is fully representative of sun. Sun, we said, is etzem, is bright in etzem. Not light that gets manufactured by consumption of fuel, like we know it in our world. It is light. This is called Oir HaRishon. That light doesn't come to our world. If it should come to our world, it will cease to be a world. It will cease to have darkness. Our world has to have darkness. To be able to see things, you have to have darkness. So, the same thing, when talking about the neshama, when talking about the lakus, the oir harishon and world are not, can go together. World comes as a result of the tzimtzum of the oir harishon, the concealment of the oir harishon. And what comes to the world? A subset, a very limited, a subset means a secondary level. And not only a secondary, but thirdly and fourthly, and so forth, a very limited aspect of it. And if you want to, so to speak, identify in words what aspect comes, this is what I said before, the functional. Functional means the functional aspect, not the essential aspect. You understand? This is a subset. That which can affect the world, but not the essence of it. Okay? Questions? Answers?
I sort of missed the last part about the neshama. I was writing something else down. So
I'm sorry?
or if you could say the kitzur, what you said about the neshama and the guf.
The neshama, okay. The neshama, I said, the neshama is similar, the similar muscle, but the neshama is a much higher level. But we have the similar inyan that we can observe and understand in the neshama with the guf. The neshama gives life to the guf. But it gives life to the guf. It makes the guf living. It doesn't make guf neshama. Neshama is essence of life. But the guf doesn't become essence living. Yeah, it has to be maintained. It has to work very hard to keep alive. So it's a life that comes from the neshama, but only a ha'ara of the neshama that comes into the guf and gives it life. Because the guf essentially, even while it is alive, and the life of the neshama, is essentially guf, which on its own cannot live. It can only receive the neshama. It lives only from the neshama. Doesn't become a living entity unto itself. Say? You get the point? Okay, so let's look inside. So I'm going to reread the lines that we discussed, so that so that we will see how this which we discussed is essentially explains these words. So in the higher worlds, Meir Gil Elokus is the Kavanah was in Oilmas HaTachtein. What is different in Oilmas HaTachtein? It is, she is Havusam Hu Alidei Tzimtzum Behelam Ha'oir. Their creation, their coming into being, comes as a result of the Tzimtzum Behelam Ha'oir, the concealment of the oir. What does Helam Ha'oir mean? It means Sheha'oir Horishoin Misalem Umistatin Legamri. The first oir is withdrawn and concealed completely. What is the first oir? What does oir horishin mean? Oir horishin is that oir which represents the essence. Like we gave the mashal of the sun. Oir horishin is that which represents the essence of sun. Sun is, as I said, in sun there is no such thing as darkness. The oir horishin represents, this is that kind of oir that cannot recognize darkness. That oir has to be completely concealed, which means that oir, to create the world, has to be completely concealed. The world cannot possibly be privy, experience that oir. If it experiences that oir, then it's not world. Oir Tachtein. Oir Tachtein have to be Tachtoinim, lower levels, which means they're only all worlds, not godliness. Just like the guf cannot be neshama. Just like the world, the physical world, cannot be sun. Okay. V'nimshach oir, and then once this oir horishin is concealed, then is drawn oir she'einoi be'erech oir horishin klal. That is not be'erech. The word be'erech means comparable. Huh?
So is that incomparable, you said?
Erech means comparable. Eina be'erech means it's not comparable. It's not in that league of Oir Horishin. It's in a different category completely. Eina be'erech Oir Horishin klal. The example of erech, and the Alter Rebbe gives a very tangible example for us to understand the term Eina be'erech. The Alter Rebbe says like this: if somebody says that a certain thought, a certain idea, a seichel, certain seichel is so deep that I can't touch it with my fingers. I can't feel it with my fingers. Like if I would say, let's say, that this tabletop is so smooth that you can hardly feel it with your fingers. Right? You feel, let's say the chair, you feel its roughness. The tabletop is so smooth that it hardly affects your fingers. It makes sense.
No, but you feel the smoothness.
What?
You feel the smoothness of the table.
Yeah, but feeling its smoothness is like feeling the smoothness. It doesn't resist the fingers. You know what I'm saying? This resists. This, because it doesn't resist, you call it smooth. But it doesn't resist anything. It doesn't affect anything. This affects it. But to say a certain seichel, a certain idea, seichel, is so fine, so deep, that I can't feel it. It doesn't affect my fingers. It's not in that realm. This is the idea that it's not be'erech. It's not talking about the same realm. So nimshach hoyer she'eine be'erech oir horishin. I know that it's not be'erech. It's not in the same realm of oir horishin. Like in our example, the light, the sun, is a light that knows no darkness. The light that comes to the earth relates to darkness. It's not in the same league. That's what's called the She'ina Be'er, Oir Horisha. It's not in the same league as the Oir Horisha. Okay, this is where we are going to stop. Give you a chance to reflect on all the concepts and insights.
I like the Ramban.
What?
I like the Ramban. It's very cool.
You like the Ramban? Okay. I like the Ramban too. What else do you like? Okay. So, have fun reviewing it. I hope you really think it through and review it, because it's not going to get any lighter.
It's not getting any what?
It's not going to get any easier.
What's he still going to explain what the origin is?